Outside Argentina's Mar del Plata naval base in November 2017, an angry crowd was amassing. Their loved ones had been lost at sea for 8 days, and the anxious friends and relatives of the submariners wanted answers. How could a modern submarine with sophisticated high-tech support simply vanish with all 44 hands on board? Then Argentine naval officials stepped forward to deliver some heartbreaking news. The TR-1700 class submarine ARA San Juan started life in a shipyard in the then West Germany, where it was completed in June 1983. The vessel was launched in 1985. A few years later, the diesel-electric sub was enlisted in war games by the U.S. Navy. The San Juan took part in a number of exercises before being refitted by Argentina in 2008. The refurbishment of the San Juan took longer than expected due to budgetary constraints, but it was successfully relaunched in 2013. As part of the Argentine Submarine Force, the San Juan was one of 3 vessels based at a naval base close to the city of Mar del Plata. Translated as Sea of the Silver Region, the city lies some 260 miles south of Argentinian capital Buenos Aires on the country's Atlantic coast. From its easterly base, the San Juan took part in surveillance maneuvers, largely gathering intelligence to combat illicit fishing. At the beginning of November 2017, the San Juan found itself in the waters of Tierra del Fuego, an archipelago off the coast of Chile and Argentina. The island group forms the most southerly tip of the South American continent. After performing well in war games organized by the Argentine Navy, the submarine traveled to Ushuaia, the Argentinian capital of the islands. Ushuaia is sometimes known as the end of the world. Eventually, on November 13, 2017, the San Juan set off for the 1,800-mile journey home to Mar del Plata. The craft was manned by a crew of 44. Among them were Operations Chief Aliana Maria Krozik, the first woman to become a submarine officer in Argentina, and Commander Pedro Martin Fernandez. At 45 years old, Commander Fernandez had been in charge of the vessel since 2015. Then, 4 days later, on November 17th, relatives of the San Juan crew received some alarming news. Apparently, the submarine had been missing for 2 days. In fact, the Argentine Navy had heard nothing at all from the vessel since November 15th. The last contact was made when the sub was 450 miles off the eastern coast of Argentina in the San Jorge Gulf, roughly halfway home. As the loved ones of the San Juan submariners waited anxiously, a search and rescue operation had been launched to track down the missing sub. Soon, as many as 27 ships scanned the area where contact with the vessel was lost. Although the majority of these boats were Argentinian, contingents from Brazil, Chile, the UK, and the US Navy, among others, all joined the hunt. Meanwhile, in the skies, an international fleet of aircraft began scouring the surface of the South Atlantic Ocean for any sign of the San Juan. Back on shore, Mauricio Macri, the president of Argentina, relocated to Mar del Plata in order to personally supervise the air and sea search on the ground. And the relatives of those on board the submarine continued to wait with bated breath. On November 18th, the family's hopes were raised by an Argentinian Ministry of Defense update. The government department said that it had received a number of calls that day from a satellite phone it suggested may have been on board the submarine. Sadly, the communications had not been connected, and worse, they were later revealed to be a false alarm. In reality, the rescue efforts were not going well, as severe storms hampered the attempts. As the days dragged on, it became clear that time was running out. With the submarine still thought to be underwater, the crew's air supply would be running perilously low by now. The Argentine Navy estimated that the oxygen tanks on the San Juan could keep a 44-strong crew alive for 7 to 10 days. Furthermore, if the vessel had merely been experiencing communications difficulties, it should have already reached its destination at Mar del Plata. On November 20th, there was a sliver of hope when authorities received reports of sounds akin to people banging on the submarine's hull being detected by sonar equipment. However, these noises were soon dismissed by experts as coming from unspecified marine life. For the families and friends hoping for news of their loved ones, it was a heartbreaking waiting game. "We don't know anything. We're desperate," a relative told UK newspaper The Guardian on November 19th. Then, on November 23rd, a shocking new development emerged that would really test the families. The Argentine Navy announced that it was pursuing a new lead, Apparently, the Preparatory Commission of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization, or CTBTO, had detected something unusual in its operations. It flagged up data that it was analyzing from November 15th, the day the San Juan disappeared. The CTBTO data was collected at a listening base on Ascension Island in the South Atlantic Ocean. It suggested that there had been an explosion in the area where the submarine had vanished, just hours after it had last made contact. And although the search and rescue operation continued, some of the crew members next of kin began reporting sinister telephone calls. Luis Tagliapetro, whose son Damien was on board the San Juan, spoke to UK tabloid newspaper The Daily Mail on November 24th. Apparently, Tagliapetro had received a telephone call from an Argentine Navy official confirming the father's worst fears. "My son's boss confirmed that they're all dead," he said. "There's no human being that survives that." Although the Argentine Navy, claiming to have found out about the explosion a week after the submarine's disappearance, nevertheless, some beg to differ. A growing number of family members expressed anger and disbelief at the way things have been handled. "They're a disgrace. They lied to us," Etati Leguizamon, wife of crew member German Oscar Suarez, told the Daily Mail. Despite the family's rising fury, officials did not confirm the submarine's loss for several days. Worse, the Argentinian authorities continued to suggest that the San Juan crew might still be found alive. Then on November 27th, the Argentine Navy made another dramatic announcement. Apparently, the vessel's last communication had reported a leak that had damaged batteries and started a fire. Finally, on November 30th, more than a fortnight since the San Juan had been heard from, the Argentine Navy announced that it was calling off the rescue mission. But as the hunt for survivors turned into a salvage operation, different theories began emerging as to what had really happened on board the ill-fated submarine. Did the damaged batteries explode, causing fatal damage to the underwater asset? Or did the San Juan's 22 torpedoes unexpectedly go off while still on board, wreaking havoc on the submerged sub? The latter tragic accident was thought to have caused the sinking of the K-141 Kursk submarine. The Russian vessel came to grief in the Barents Sea with the loss of 118 souls back in August 2000. However, there was no evidence to suggest that something similar had happened to the San Juan. In the face of secrecy from Argentine authorities, some observers have begun to wonder if something sinister was at work. In fact, heartbroken relatives have accused officials of a cover-up. Interestingly, female crew member Eliana Krausik's brother claimed that his sister had called him before the San Juan even left Ushuaia, telling him that the submarine was experiencing a mechanical fault. Today, the bereaved are still trying to find out the truth about what happened to their loved ones. Sadly, no answer seems to be forthcoming, and while some are petitioning the Argentine Navy to continue their search, others have accepted that all is lost. In December 2017, Jessica Gopar paid a touching tribute to her missing submarine officer husband, Fernando Santilli. Speaking to the Daily Mail, she said, "He's a hero who must be recognized. I hope you didn't suffer, my love."